Welcome back to ESBR Boxing's YouTube channel. Delighted as always to be joined by Greg and Paul. This is a reaction video reacting to the news that number one middleweight in the world, Janibek Alimkhanuly, will face the Frenchman Anauel Ngamissengue on the 25th of April in Kazakhstan. His first fight in Kazakhstan since 2017. Gents, good to be joined by both of you. One of the most exciting fighters in the world, Janibek Alimkhanuly, is in action again. Was last in action back in October, facing perhaps not the biggest name in the middleweight division, but an undefeated fighter. Somebody who's younger than him, and we will see what happens. Greg, give us your instant reaction to this announcement, please.
Yeah, thanks, Elliot. Good to speak to you and Paul as always. It's a strange one. I think we always expect when it's Janibek or a fighter who is a big name in the division, we want big name fights for them. But as we slightly said off camera, it's maybe the fact that they've worked their way down the rankings. Not a lot of people want to fight Janibek. And this kid, he's a former Olympian, undefeated, decent knockout record. Went to Poland and stopped an undefeated prospect who still has a high ranking. So yeah, send it on, man. But I think if he comes through this, we need to see Janibek in with the big boys after this.
Yeah, and we'll definitely kind of touch on that. There's a couple of names I want to throw at both of you as I like to do. But yeah, hopefully this is going to be a big year for Janibek. Paul, give us your reaction to this. I know it's not a name a lot of people are familiar with, but it's not someone who's kind of a nobody. It's somebody who's ranked with the IBF, somebody who's undefeated, somebody who can punch a bit. So give us your reaction to this one.
Yeah, 100%, mate. Despite what you're saying there, like I think when you do look at the middleweight landscape, it's kind of like who else could he fight bar the champ? Because outside of the champions, like you're kind of maybe clutching at straws. Um, but and it's not Janibek's fault, I suppose, in a way. He is a feared man. I see that this fight personally is kind of somewhat of a homecoming, really. He hasn't fought, as you said, in Kazakhstan for what will be nearly 8 years. Um, it's the chance for his home fans to see him. I don't think there's a massive chance that he's going to get beat. Guy he's fought has never been in a 12 rounder. Sorry, the guy he's fighting has never been in a 12 rounder, hasn't gone that distance. Don't think he'll need to go the distance as well because I think there's a high chance he could potentially get stopped. But I mean, as you said, as long as it kind of leads to bigger fights in the summer and the back end of 2025, I'm not fussed. As long as we see him in there with maybe some of the other champions, the winner, I'm sure you're going to come on to the winner of the February 22nd middleweight contest, something like that. I'd accept this if then I get that next. Yeah, but I mean, ultimately, reaction to this, slight disappointment, but not really unexpected, to be honest.
Yeah, for sure. Look, I think we've been doing this long enough to know that it's unlikely that top fighters are going to fight other top fighters time and time and time again. I just feel like with Janibek, we're not really seeing him fight top fighters at all. So maybe there's a bit of frustration there. Um, had a little look through Janibek. 'Cause Janibek, I don't know if he runs his own Twitter account, but kind of fires out some tweets that are quite interesting on an occasional basis. A couple of days ago was talking about fighting David Benavidez, which I thought was wild to do that. David Benavidez is two weights above him, so I'm not sure why he's kind of said that, and now he's announcing this fight. Paul, I'll stick with you. One name I want to ask you about, Denzel Bentley, ranked number one with the WBO, beat Brad Pauls last time out in December. Is that we saw what happened between Janibek and Denzel Bentley a couple of years back now? Do you think why isn't Janibek fighting Bentley now? Do you think it's because he sees it as too much of a risk he doesn't need to take? Do you think he's just kind of gone down a different route? That fight sounded like it was possible when Denzel Bentley last fought. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think suppose looking at it from that angle, yeah, I mean the fight probably makes sense. But then I was thinking about this, and put yourself in Janibek's shoes. You're sitting thinking, I already beat that guy. Yeah, we probably thought, let's be honest, a lot of people did think Bentley was going to get it beaten fairly handily, like maybe early. He didn't. Got beaten though, fair and square. So he's probably looking at it thinking, I've already beaten this guy. Do I need to do it again? Like he beat him, but it wasn't overly close. So it's like, do you need to see the fight again? I do get that, but then if you are Denzel Bentley, I suppose you're coming in off a couple of good wins there, particularly that Brad Paul's one, as you mentioned. As when you look at the middleweight landscape, someone like Denzel Bentley, when we see the current state of the middleweight landscape, as you mentioned, probably does, deserve a shot. Is Denzel Bentley better than this guy that Janibek's fighting? Possibly. We'll maybe find out more when this fight goes down. But yeah, I mean, I suppose you can probably look at it from the angle that he maybe be a little disappointed, but at the same time, I can completely see why Janibek would say, "Why do I need to beat him again?"
Yeah, yeah. Fantastic. Greg, I'll come back to you with something different. What do you think? Do you think that this fight is, as Paul kind of mentioned, kind of it's a homecoming fight, but also do you think this is a fight that is a way of staying active for maybe having a big fight in the summer? The big fight that I want to put across to you is the winner of Hamza Shiraz versus Carlos Adames. That fight we've been teased with. That fight would be for 3 of the 4 world title belts at middleweight. Do you think that's the plan for Janibek this year and the next few months, or not so much?
No, I think it is. Listening to a lot of what Paul said as well, it's one of those fights where he doesn't want to be out the ring, and then with the greatest respect, say Hamza Shiraz wins, jumps into a big fight with Hamza Shiraz, relatively inactive. The guy probably wants to go back to Kazakhstan. He's achieved something great. He's been unified middleweight champion. He wants to come back and have a decent fight, but a fight that he probably should win. And then, I think it's going to take someone, Elliot, like Turki Al-Sheikh, though, to make a fight like Hamza Shiraz versus Janibek Alimkhanuly, because Elliot, these guys are not going to want to fight Janibek unless they're getting a fortune. So if they're getting paid well enough, they'll fight him. But I think that's the only way.
Yeah, yeah. Look, we'll see what happens. Final question. I'll ask this question to both of you gents. Janibek has been at middleweight for quite a long time now. He obviously had that incident where he kind of was rushed to hospital last year. I think it was down to the dehydration issues. How much longer do you think he has at middleweight? Obviously, that's Canelo Alvarez is still the king at super middleweight. There's maybe not bundles of other massive fights for him at super middleweight, but he may be kind of forced to move up sooner rather than later. Greg, how much longer do you see Janibek staying at middleweight?
I think it gets tougher for fighters as they get older, Elliot. Janibek, I mean, he's approaching mid-30s now. He's over 6 foot. He's got to make 11 stone 5, 11 stone 6 or so. That's a hard weight to make. I think that he's there for a blockbuster fight, to basically say that I'm I say undisputed, but I don't mean that in terms of win all 4 titles. I just basically mean that there's no doubt that you're number one in the division. I think he's there for that fight, and then I think you'll see him move up to super middleweight, because that's becoming quite an open division. Elliot, Canelo, like you say, is not going to be there forever. David Benavidez went up to heavyweight. David Morrell went up to light heavyweight. David Morrell went up to light heavyweight. So it's a division that's kind of waiting to be claimed. So I think he's maybe got 1 or 2 left at middleweight.
Yeah, Paul, I'll leave things with you. Can you see Janibek fighting Canelo Alvarez? Canelo Alvarez, as things stand, the rumors he's going to be fighting Terence Crawford at super middleweight in September. If he was to win that fight, we don't know if he's going to have another crack at light heavyweight. But I think if he remains at super middleweight, there aren't a huge amount of guys for him to face. But Janibek could be one of these legitimate contenders that people would be interested to see him fight Canelo Alvarez. Do you think that fight could happen possibly this time next year?
I hate to underwhelm. I just don't see that fight ever happening, to be honest with you, mate. Um, I can see Janibek going up to 168 for sure. But I just can't foresee that fight happening. I think, perhaps with the Crawford fight, who's obviously been a career. Well, he was 140, then 147. Only had the one fight at 154. Like, I know Canelo's not huge, but he's a fully fledged super middleweight. He's been there for years. I think if he is going to go anywhere, he'll go up to light heavy again. But I ultimately see that he's probably not no discredit. I would say that he's probably looking the biggest fights for the biggest amounts of money with the least amount of risk, maybe at the back end of his career. And I don't think Janibek fits that bill. If he was to fight him at 160, I think it's maybe too much of a risk at that stage of his career. But I like to see the fight, but I just can't foresee it.
I
Fantastic.
think Paul's spot on there. I don't think I could have said it any better. It's a fight that Canelo doesn't really need. It's too much a risk. Elliot, why would they go and fight this Kazakh killer that's not going to, like do his legacy any good? So yeah, really well put, Paul. I agree with you there.
Yeah, for sure. And I think from a financial perspective, it will be interesting to see how much money is on the line for this fight if this fight against Crawford happens. And I think the problem is when you have these massive super fights, um, it's hard to maybe come back down in from a financial sense, and it would be quite a drop from fighting Terence Crawford to fighting Janibek Alimkhanuly. No fault of anyone's, but I think that's going to be quite a hard fight to justify Canelo taking in 2026 as well. Gents, good to be joined with both of you as always. We will see what happens. April the 5th, Janibek Alimkhanuly faces Anauel Ngamissengue. Greg, Paul, thank you both very much for joining me. We'll speak to you again very soon.
Thanks
Thanks,
for me. All
Elliot.
the
Thanks,
best.
guys.